Hey, everybody, I got a smooth dude on the channel today, and I like this guy a lot. And this is not the first time he's come on here. Matter of fact, when he came on the first time, he might have been my first, no, probably about my fourth or fifth interview. We have grown in videos and subscribers since he came on, and he and I have remained in contact over the years. Not years, it's a year. And well, it's been a couple years because I met him when I had a showing of my movie in Montgomery. This guy here, he's a heavyweight in his town, Montgomery, Alabama. Very well respected. I'm Anthony Brogdon. You're here at Strong Inspirations, where we give it to you straight, no chaser. We've been giving it to you that way since the beginning, and we're going to keep giving it to you like that until the end, which I don't know when that'll be. I enjoy this. Did you see the video I got on the channel of a guy out of Birmingham, Alabama, that was a radio DJ that my man said he was talking on the radio during the civil rights in Birmingham and keeping the people informed? And the white people kind of liked him for being such an honest, straightforward guy. Some of them did. There were some who didn't. They came to a party that he was DJing for the white folks. So they want to hear black music, and circled the building looking for him to come out. And the white folks said, no, you ain't getting him. Watch that video. Did you see the one that I did? And I'm staying in his state of Alabama with the guy who's a bishop, Calvin Brooks, Woods. And Bishop Woods said, hey, man, I've been spit on, I've been shot at, I've been punched, I've been put in jail. He said all that really wasn't what bothered me the most. He said, but when they showed up at my house with them torches in the middle of the night, that night I got scared. He said, I got on my knees and I prayed and they left. He said he don't know why. And he ain't asking why, but he know they left. All because he was telling his people, his parishioners, hey, we got to stand up. Those who want to, I'm with you. And the word got to the races. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy who he lives in Alabama, and he said they moved into a nice neighborhood outside, not that the black neighborhoods weren't nice, but moved out of the black neighborhood, moved in more white neighborhood, what have you. And him and his brother walking down the street, the police stopped him, talking about, hey, what y'all doing here? Said, hey, we bought the house down the street, so on and so, that's where we live. He said a couple hours later, the police kicked the door in, dragged the brother, who was 13, down the stairs. Watch that video. Man, we jamming here at Strong Inspirations, and they are not all of that oak, not the videos. Not the one that we got on the channel now with Frederick Douglass's three-time great grandson and Booker T. Washington, the guy's same person, two-time great. We cover everything. Not the one where I got the video on the channel out of Mobile, Alabama, where the guy said his great grandfather was on the last slave ship, the Catilda. And things, when they got here, there wasn't but about another 4 layers left of slavery. He got in the 1865, slavery ended. And then they developed their own neighborhood, how they separate us. And now it's called Africatown. And what they're doing there to develop Africatown, watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the lady who says, oh man, most of us think that slavery was when black folks first got to America? Not true. They were down in Florida many years before that, and even throughout America. There were black people coming here as explorers, looking to get wealthy themselves along with the white guy, or the white guy brought them, whatever. Watch those videos. Oh, we jamming here at Strong Inspirations. And the guy that's on the channel today, he's got a story that I know you all, most of you all, you should have heard about. It's going across a bridge. But the crazy part is we wasn't doing that, but just, you know, protesting. Didn't have no arms or nothing like that. We get on the other side of the bridge and they want to beat us down. Talking about you can't cross the bridge. Why come we can't? Watch, they wasn't obstructing traffic or nothing. Just because we don't like what y'all talking about. You're gonna beat us down. And one of the people that they beat down, and then he gonna tell the story, was our renowned John Lewis. That's when he got his beat down, along with all the mothers that took a blow to the head or whatever. That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, so that's what's going on. You know, I got my own festival in Kansas City, Kansas. People are signing up. I'm really excited. We're going to have a good time. And we might have a good crowd too. I know it's my first one, but I'm telling you, I'm going to make sure that you have a good time at Freedom Quindaro. I'm going to make sure that it's well organized, that the food is good, that what we do together as a group, you'll enjoy, and you got time to spend on your own. And if you've never been to Kansas City, why not go now under the knowledge that there's something special going on and because you like Black history. So come and join me in Freedom Quindaro this Memorial Day weekend, May 27th through the 29th. It's a weekend pass. They get you in all the events plus the food. And we got some for people who, you know, don't eat beef and pork like myself. We got some salads and things of that sort that we also will be able to serve you. It's going to be good, man. I'm telling you, y'all need to get in on that. Now, all that you can find out about on my website, businessintheblack.net. The other thing is, and I'm gonna go fast because my man, he busy. He heavyweight in that town. He running and gunning. He jamming. You hear what I'm saying? He college professor. He teaching them students. He teaching them students the real deal. So watch my movie, businessintheblack.net. Business in the Black is the name of the movie. The website, businessintheblack.net, on how slaves went to college. Slaves earned money on owning their own business. Yeah, if you ain't heard that, you need to watch this. Yeah, it's streaming on Amazon. And then read my book, Black Business Book, over 200 facts, similar to the movie, but more thorough, because, you know, I was able just to get more in, cover more, and make it really easy for you to read it, because I don't add no commentary. And then I give you the fact in the back of the book of where I found it. So get you a copy of that today. Again, go to the website, businessintheblack.net. Now, you hear me, and then you all know this, you've been watching me. I love the word strong, and I probably will continue to love it because it just says a lot. And in my world, it says strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And as he knows, that is my introduction to my guest today. He's a strong soul brother out of that town. He's jamming, PhD. He did man, let me tell you something. He can't hear me. When he wrote his dissertation, they said, we ain't got to read it. You a PhD. We ain't got to read your dissertation, man. They went through the first paragraph, said, this look good, boom. All right, let's go on there and walk across that stage, take your tassel and all that stuff. He that tight. And now he teaching other people to be tight like him. Check him out. Sir, introduce yourself. Thank you for coming back on Strong Inspirations. I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
Sure. Well, it's good to be back. And my name is Robert White. I teach African-American humanities, constitutional law, and I also teach in the doctoral program, education doctoral program at Alabama State University. I've been there for almost 30 years. I'm also a pastor. I pastor Montgomery City of Refuge Church in Montgomery, and co-founder of Alabama Legal Focus, and advisor and facilitator for HBCU Legal Focus Group, and also host um, and produce radio talk shows, and publish 4 books, and I got 3 more that are about to come out. And I'm happy to be here, and we can keep it moving with the conversation.
Yeah, I love it, man. I told you he heavy. He do all that, and he still got time to, go play golf or whatever, I suspect, because you got to get some relaxation in,
Yeah.
and then raise the family and be who that is under the auspices of the Lord. Let me ask you this, and everybody, I'm not gonna go deep in this background like I normally do because it's on the other video, but growing up, did you grow up in Montgomery?
No, I grew up in Tuskegee.
Tuskegee, okay.
Yeah, Tuskegee, Alabama. Both my parents were associated with the academic community. My mom was a biologist and my dad was a biochemist. And so they met at Tuskegee. My dad was a biochemist at the VA hospital there in Tuskegee, and my mom was a student, and she worked in the Carver Foundation as a research assistant as well. And so I grew up around Black businesses, Black professionals, Black politicians, and got introduced to Black thought at a very early age.
I love it. Growing up there under that, and they knew that you had your special skills as you did. Did they do certain things to make sure you didn't get caught up in the civil rights with the other kids? They told you don't protest, stuff like that, because I know that there was some of that went on. We don't want you to get in trouble.
No, I mean, it was in the 70s, when I came up. So all of that was over. And, what we were dealing with was just in Tuskegee, because it was a most predominantly Black town, we weren't dealing with racism, growing up from a micro perspective. But when my parents moved away and I went to, high schools that were predominantly white, that's when a lot of what you were told and a lot what you had been exposed to, is staring you in the face. So I had many confrontations at my high school, not because I was antagonistic. I was the exact opposite. I was a ball player. Everybody loved me, didn't have any kind of problems or anything really. But, I find myself having to be the spokesperson, for Black people. And I found myself in positions, the way I had to articulate the Black cause and, to defend myself intellectually, based on some things that were either said or questions that were asked or even things that would happen. So, and I wouldn't call it trouble. I think if you, look at my resume, troublemaker wasn't a part of it, but, my sister and I, we did push the envelope, and, we did very painstakingly try to drag these high schools out of their status quo, and with somewhat manifest success.
Okay, let's go into that just a tad. That's going to lead into the topic at hand. That was your fight. That was your contribution, let's say, to change the minds even on that level at the school. Give me an example of what you tried to do in your way to change their mind about Black people, or about how they were presenting Black people, or whatever.
Well, sure. I think one of the most memorable things that I was able to do was actually a paper that I wrote. And the paper claimed that a lot of the plays that William Shakespeare was given credit for were actually written by an African named Christopher Marlowe. And
really?
And so my lit teacher, who was a Shakespeare fanatic, was livid that a little nobody like me would make such a claim and could back it up with facts. But she was also very impressed. And so she still remembers me to this day. And she still has that look of this, not disgust, but audacity on her face. How dare you make such a statement? But I could back it up. And the reason why I was able to do it was because, because I was growing up on a college campus, and my mom, when we moved away from Tuskegee, my mom was still teaching at Tuskegee. And I was walking down the hallway and I heard this lecturer lecturing on Christopher Marlowe. And after I stayed in the hallway, I was in high school. I stayed in the hallway, and after it was over, I asked for his bibliography and I asked for a copy of his paper, and he gave it to me. So I didn't plagiarize, but what I did do was I took his notes and took his bibliography and built one heck of a paper on it, which, you know, to this day, the English faculty at the high school, you know, kind of memorialized it. So that was one of the most memorable things. And another thing was when I wore a t-shirt, well, a sweater from Tuskegee homecoming that had Black by popular demand on it.
Yeah.
And a lot of my teachers, my white teachers and my white counterparts were asking, you know, what that meant. And, you know, so I was just, you know, sporting it around the high school like it wasn't no problem. But, you know, the school that I went to, you know, they didn't have problems wearing Confederate flags, but, you know,
really?
yeah, right. They had no problem doing it. And it really wasn't that big of a issue, you know.
Hold on, what do you mean it wasn't a bigger issue for you or them?
No, it wasn't a big issue for them or me because, you know, as long as we could wear what we wanted to wear, I mean, you know, it was okay. And so you didn't have that much and you know, much friction just simply around wearing a shirt, you know, with the Confederate flag on it. But when you ask them or question them about what it meant, you know, they would just say, well, it's just Southern heritage, it's just this, that, and the other. So, you know, but, you know, although I knew a little better, they didn't. But, you know, I was wearing my Black by popular demand. They were wearing their Confederate stuff, their Leonard Skinner stuff. So I was cool, you know, as long as I could do what I wanted to do, you know, I felt it was okay for them to, you know, do what they want to do. And, you know, there wasn't any friction or antagonisms, you know, between us anyway, you know, so it was just, they were just as ignorant as anybody else. But, you know, that was two of the things. And there were some other things, you know, that you do to, here again, drag people out of the status quo regarding the assumptions, you know, that people have. One more thing that I'll say, and then we can move on, because I played sports, you know, and high school is real, you know, categorized and stratified. You know, you fit in one group or the other. But I was on the basketball team. You know, I was a good player. You know, I had some good accolades behind me. But I was also on the Scholars Bowl team, which was the school's debate team. You know, and it came up. My basketball team was in the playoffs, and we had a debate tournament as well. Well, some people at the school decided for me that I was going to play basketball and not go on the debate tournament. And so my dad, you know, who was my leader, you know, he left it up to me. And so, you know, I guess they forgot that I had a dad, and that dad pretty much, you know, ran my show, you know. And I told them, you know, that I was going to the debate team, you know, and so the team would just have to do without me, you know. So I made a decision to go in that route rather than the athletic route, you know, which was pretty disturbing, you know, because, you know, the assumption is that Black men are athletes, but not thinkers. So I wanted to do the Scholars Bowl thing, you know, for that reason. And there was also a girl on the Scholars Bowl team that I liked, so I wanted to try to get close to her. So, you know, it worked out.
Okay, we ain't going in no depth in that unless that's the way, so to speak.
It is what it is.
But now, I want to stay on this. What was, if you remember, what was maybe a common question that they asked you as to represent Black people with your answer? Is there one of them like that comes to mind?
It's still the same one today. What do Black people want? And I learned very early, you know, from listening to people who would come to the campus and lecture. I mean, you know, I heard Dr. Ben Yakinen, John Henry Clark. We had some homegrown heroes, Dr. Tolan and Dr. Fluker. And, you know, like I say, when you're walking down the hall, you know, to your mom's office or, you know, going on an errand for her, you know, you sit in and you listen to them talk. You know, my dad and his friends and colleagues or whatever, you know, you end up being able to answer what Black people want. And what Black people want is what other people want. Is one, to be left alone. Number two, to be able to obtain land. Number three, be able to manifest their ideas and goals without being hindered by the government, right? And four, to perpetuate that to their future generations. So, you know, it's almost like, you know, you can just spit it out, you know, off the top of your head, because knowing what you want is the basis of all political action, you know, and knowing how to get it follows knowing what you want. That's where the education comes in. The education teaches you how to get what you want.
and this question is the lead into our topic. And before we say what the topic is, what did Black people want to make them protest? You said that, but they also just said, okay, you taking our money because we got to make us pay tax. So we want
Right.
some of our equitable share of the money to have equal resources, education, police force, whatever. That's another part of that want, right?
Well, oh, absolutely. But you have to understand that the time period that we're talking about, that I'm assuming you're making reference to, is the time period between the 50s and 60s, right?
Yes.
That 10-year period from the things leading up to the Montgomery bus boycott to the things leading up to and after the Selma to Montgomery march. Well, you have to understand that Montgomery had over 150 businesses before Martin Luther King ever got there. And
Black-owned
Montgomery
businesses.
right, absolutely. See,
Okay.
the assumption is that, you know, our trajectory is and our plight is out of slavery, when in all actuality, our plight and trajectory is out of a loss of what had been obtained prior to 1950. So we own land, we own businesses in a lot of places. We were building economic hubs like Tulsa, like Atlanta, St. Louis, Montgomery, Tuskegee. You know, you had these in Mobile, Birmingham.
Yeah.
You know, you had these places to where Blacks were building businesses and moving forward. Was it at the same pace as white people? No. You know, were there struggles unique to that situation? Yes. But Black people were building for themselves a strong economic base. It was just snatched away from them in between the 1950s and the 1960s. And that had to do with some changes that were taking place in American society that Black people really didn't have a grasp of what was taking place, nor did they have a stake in it. So a lot of the economic gains were lost, not so much because of direct overt racism or because of like lynching and those types of things, but because of other nonviolent hidden methods that white people were using to undermine Black success.
Okay, let's go to the story at hand. The story that we that I had asked him to talk about today, my viewers, is about the bridge crossing. What's the title of the bridge crossing? And then let's connect that to what you just said.
Well, the events that you're referring to that are historically commemorated is referred to as the Bridge Crossing Jubilee. And it's a commemoration every first Sunday of March of the Bloody Sunday event, right? And that was when marchers organized, you know, for the purpose of doing a public display to protest police brutality, and then at the same time to push for voting rights. The whole effort to march from Selma to Montgomery was actually done in response to the death of a man in Marion, Alabama named Jimmy Lee Jackson. And the suggestion was, after he was killed, you had
The white people killed him.
Yes, you had state troopers. A state trooper shot him. But why he was shot and the circumstances around his shooting are very important. One of my former mentors, Reverend James Orange, and C.T. Vivian were in Marion, Alabama, doing voter registration and organizing the people, you know, for mass voter turnout and political party building.
Okay, let me stop you there. So I want to make sure the timeline is right. So the vote is in November.
You said what now?
The vote is in November.
The vote?
They're for voter registration, and the day to vote is in November, or when?
No, they were doing it at, you mean at the time? Yeah,
yes.
at the time, no, they were just doing basic voter registration, voter education, and platform building in the Black Belt. And
okay.
that came about as a result of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and SCLC and the Mississippi Freedom Party doing organizing in that. That's why my book is called Highway 80, because there's like a corridor of civil rights activity that took place in Alabama and Mississippi, particularly. So those efforts were being centralized in those West Alabama towns known as the Black Belt and Mississippi. And so you had Reverend James Orange and C.T. Vivian that were in Marion, Alabama, and Reverend James Orange got arrested, and the white people in Marion were threatening to lynch him. So Black people organized outside of the jail and prevented the people from lynching Reverend James Orange. And so in the fray, Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot after the cops showed up and started roughing people up. And he was shot and killed protecting his mother. Well, you know, after that, the people decided, or it was their idea locally, to take Jimmy Lee Jackson's body and march it all the way to the Capitol and dump it out at the steps of the Capitol to protest his murder and to show how police brutality and to show how evil and wicked the system was in Alabama.
Okay,
well,
let me stop you there. I don't mean no disrespect. When you say march, from where to where?
They were going to march from Selma to Montgomery.
Which is how far?
It's about 50 miles. But the trek that people were taking to Selma, you know, was sometimes over 100 because it's almost another 50 miles from Marion to Selma. So some people were gonna, you see what I'm saying? So you have different legs of it. Nothing is as clear. I mean, you know, it's not as stratified as people think. But you had two legs. You had the leg coming out of the Black Belt in the Selma, and then you had the leg from Selma to Montgomery.
I got you.
So some people were marching, you know, almost over 100 miles. But the point was, the original intent of the march was to protest the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson, not for voting rights. But after Southern Christian Leadership Conference, you know, kind of took control of the situation, Martin Luther King, you know, basically wanted to turn that into a march for voting rights, and that's what happened.
What year is this?
1965.
And so how does the word get out in 65 to make these decisions to say, okay, we want to take the body? I mean, does the family get in on it and say, hey, I'm all behind this. Okay, he's dead is a bigger cause. What have you?
Right. Well, what you have is you have a relationship that is somewhat antagonistic and then somewhat amenable, which is that of local grassroots organizing versus organizing on a national level.
Okay.
So when Martin Luther King, when his emphasis shifts from local stuff like in Montgomery to national stuff like with Selma becomes a part of a national agenda. That's why the emphasis shifted from the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson to voting rights, right? So the local people were naturally incensed by the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson, and they were also organizing, to protest locally in Selma anyway. So those two efforts actually merged, and with the help of certain SNCC, well, mostly certain SCLC people and SNCC following behind them, it eventually became a march for voting rights. But you have local people pushing for one thing and the national people pushing for another.
Let me ask you this. Where are they meeting to make these decisions? At somebody's church in the basement, SNCC people come in, SEL people come in and say, okay, let all of us come together?
Right, that's exactly how it was done. It was done in churches. It was done mostly at night and during the day too. But they would the SNCC people would have to sneak in, take back roads, some real cloak and dagger type situations to come in. And then when they come in, they would hide out at different people's houses. But the rumor would get out of where the meeting would be at this church or that church or this funeral home or that cleaners or, here. And so that's where the strategy and the organizing would take place. And the main organizer was a man by the name of F.D. Reese, who's also an Alabama State University graduate. But he was kind of like the field person for SCLC and for the Alabama Voters, Negro Voters League there in Selma, Alabama. So he was the main organizer, and then the SNCC folks would come in and train and educate and and build up the people for what it was that was going to have to take place. But until the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson, and then the subsequent, involvement of like Andy Young and C.T. Vivian and John Lewis, it was going to be a local fight because the objectives of the march were on the local people, right? On the local bastions of power. But after Martin Luther King them got involved in a direct way after the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson, they felt it became necessary to turn this into a national thing and march to the state capitol for the point of voting rights.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If you know this, what day is Jimmy Lee killed and what day is the march? How much time between the death and the actual march might have happened?
Yeah, Jimmy Lee Jackson around February 18, 1965, and the march took place, a Bloody Sunday event took place on March 4th, 1965.
So you're talking 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, they made it happen.
Right, on the first, right. But you had other, you had other attempts to march. You had what was notoriously called Turnaround Tuesday. Then you had the beating. Now, the reason for the beating was because the
hold on, let me stop. When you say the beating on the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had beatings before that, but they weren't on the bridge. But the beating on the bridge, they were prevented from marching because the injunction to allow them to march had to come down from the federal government, and it had not been given. So they were going to use that as an opportunity in defying law enforcement to accomplish exactly what it was that they accomplished. They wanted people to see how brutal white folks could be. So that whole thing, as we have stated and have well documented, was more of a military technique, because even the whole strategy behind it, the purpose behind it, the way they lined up, the way they squatted, the way they dispersed after the tear gas and the horses and stuff. See, all of that was strategic. None of it was just a arbitrary type thing. It wasn't spontaneous. The people did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Okay, let me stop you there. What was they supposed to do? How were they supposed to march? What was that, like in some formation? What were they supposed to do that they did?
Yeah, they weren't supposed to march at all, but what they did do was they lined up, and it's kind of like a block and wedge type of thing. But the way they lined up was like 2 by 2, and they did it because it was difficult. That's the word. That's the best formation to have when you have the police lining up the way they did. So it was kind of like, when football teams line up on offense and defense based on what they think they're going to do. The marchers did the same thing, but it was to put the police at a severe disadvantage in dispersing. So what you had was a first wave of people to move, and the police began to push them back, and they fell down and just kind of squatted and sat there, and you didn't have a hitting at first. It was just kind of like a push, and there was a distance that became created between the first group and the rest of the people, right? And so tear gas was shot in between those two groups. The horses came on, but the horses and the tear gas didn't work too well together because the horses couldn't take the tear gas. So you had a group that was, somewhat brutalized, not much. And then you had another group that was kind of standing back there in the back. Well, when the horses started to push those people back, that's when people started running, and that's when they started hitting people. And
okay,
so the push.
Let's go a little bit before that, so that okay, what did that march start? At the beginning of the bridge or someplace else, and they walked, and now they're on this bridge?
Yeah, it started on the Selma side of the bridge, and they organized themselves, they filed themselves. And I've got a pictorial of all of this.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we're going to show it. It's going to be on, we're going to do a photo exhibit on Alabama State's campus in 2 weeks that shows the whole thing. And what we have foot soldiers coming to the pictorials, coming to the photo, exhibits, telling the public what happened. And it also opportunity for people to identify themselves on the bridge. So we've got the FBI photos, we got photos from Spotter Gordon, we got photos from Lynn Ball, who's the last living photographer that was on the bridge. And we're just trying to identify as many people that were on the bridge as possible.
Okay.
But one of the photos shows how they lined up, and it was all a military lineup. See, because you got to understand, a lot of these Black men were in the military. So, their approach was a military approach. Okay. And they knew exactly what they were doing. These people were not, they were very well trained. And the reason why a lot of white people did not die that day was because Black people were trained not to fight back. That's the only reason. because you had Black men that had guns, you know, the people that we've interviewed and have helped write our books and stuff. I mean, they all said we were armed to the teeth, but we understood that by no uncertain terms were we going to turn those guns on white people, you know.
Now, let me ask you this. Is there some idea of how many people marched?
Well, it depends on what day. I mean, I've heard everything from 50,000 to 10 to 3,000.
I'm talking about the march on Bloody Sunday.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I get all kind of numbers from what it looks like. It looks like probably about 3,000 people. That's what it looks like from the photos. Now, you had people that were all back into the neighborhoods. If you know how Selma is set up, all back into the neighborhoods around Water Street and Broad Street and all, you know, back up in there, but they weren't in formation. You know, they were going to march across the bridge too, but when they saw everybody, because if you've been to Selma, you know, on one side of the bridge, you can't see the other side. So you don't know what's taking place on the other side of the bridge. So when people started running back over the top of the bridge, everybody else took off running, and the police chased people all the way back up into the Black community, into houses, you know, kicked doors in, SNCC people. Yeah, they kicked doors in looking for SNCC people and looking for SCLC people. They were mostly looking for Stokely Carmichael, but they couldn't find him. He and others were, you know,
okay.
Not in that area.
Let me go over this then. Did the marchers make it known to the police that they were going to march that day, or was it a secret and then the police had to react?
Yeah, well, they were telling them not to. I mean, obviously, the police got the intelligence that was leaked specifically for the purpose for the cops to be there. See, the point wasn't the march. The point was to create as much of a news story as possible to shock the conscience of the country. And so that's exactly what happened. So if the cops wouldn't have showed up, it wouldn't have been much of an event. So King wanted, there's a book out called A Race Beat, where you had photographers and reporters that gave their own personal side of the stories, which I encourage all the people to read, that basically describe these things as media events. It gives you a totally different perspective, because what it shows is, it shows Black people's ability to organize around the strengths and weaknesses of the situation. And so the media is both the strength and the weakness, right? But Martin Luther King did not want those cameras turned off. He didn't even want the reporters to stop and help people. He wanted them to video the people getting beaten up, video the people getting bloodied, video the carnage, video the maiming, video all of that, because he and others agreed that that was the best way to change the consciousness of the country, was to see how brutal and how awful Americans could be to each other. Okay, let's and
you're on point, no question. Okay, so they start marching what time in the morning?
I don't know. I can't recall, you know, specifically about what time, but the organizing began, or the mobilization began early that morning, like around, you know, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, so when really? The sun so it's still up, dark out.
Yeah, so when the sun came up, they were already ready to rock and roll.
Okay. Was it a sunny day?
No, I don't think so. From the pictures, it looked like it was an overcast day.
Okay. So but okay, let me ask you this. If they are mobilizing in Selma at 3 o'clock in the morning, do the police know at 3 o'clock in the morning that a bunch of Black people are standing at the foot of the bridge, and now we got to counteract? Or they didn't get? Why didn't the police just get to them at that moment and not even let them go across the bridge?
Well, because apparently the way they organized and the way they were situated, they weren't breaking any laws. But the law, the police officers drew the line in the sand. The authorities, the sheriff, the police chief, drew the lines in the sand on the other side of the bridge. If you cross the other side of that bridge, we're going to, we're going to push you back. So that was like,
and it looks like that in the movie. That, you know, and the things that we say, they got so far, and then the police say don't go no further.
Right, exactly. They were not to break the plane of that bridge and get on the Highway 80. That's why the book is called Highway 80.
I got you. who were the first people? Was at the beginning of the march? Are they the ones that are known the most? Other than the John Lewis's and the Kings and Andrews and what have you, are they the ones that say, okay, you put your life on the line the most, because if there was going to be shooting, you in the front, you're going to get shot first.
Right, exactly. And that was, but you had a mixture of people like John Lewis and Bob Mance. You had people, but then you had local people like Albert Turner Sr. and Amelia Boynton and other people who were local people. So you had a a cadre of personalities, but Lewis and them were probably the most high profile people, but they were by no means, the only people that got beat up. And I think the fact that we mention John Lewis, but we don't mention, the scores of other people who took the same butt whipping or worse, who are not memorialized at all. And that's when you come to Selma.
Let's go into that.
To Selma, you don't, it's a totally different vibe than the sanitized and deodorized and overemphasized narratives that people give, because the battle right now in Selma is to keep the foot soldiers as the main theme and not the individuals, right? Because it was a group thing. It was not an individual thing. And every individual person, if they can take credit for anything, is drawing attention to those people who did not want to be seen or whose names just get lost in the fray. That's why we're doing what we're doing, to try to identify as many people who were on the bridge.
Okay, let me ask you this. When you say they got to this certain point, they crossed over the line, what is the beat down? How did they get beat down?
Well, you had the police officers pushing them back, and the push was an aggressive push. You have people falling down, you have people getting clubbed and hit, you have tear gas being shot. Then the horses run behind that group and start, trying to push people back. And they're mostly chasing people with clubs on horses and hitting people to get them to go back over on the other side of the bridge.
All right. So if you got hit so badly that you can't move, how does that end for those that are hurt?
They just stayed there.
You say it again?
They just stayed there. They did not, nobody came and got them until after the fray was over.
Okay, so after the fray is over, did the organizers organize to say, okay, now I need a medical unit to go and get these people, or what do you think happened in that regard?
Oh, I have, yeah. You had people to come and get them and take them to hospitals, but that was the effort of local people.
So to come and get them, they come and get them on a car, or?
Yeah. They took them, most of the people arrived to the hospitals by car.
So you hurt, you laying there, you bloody. After it's all over, the police did allow cars to get on the bridge to go get the people, or they left.
That I don't know. I don't know. From what I heard, most of the people who got beat, there were more people who got beat on the other side of the bridge than on the side of the bridge where the police were, because they pushed most of them back.
Oh, so really?
So you had a large population of people. The worst beatdowns came at the top of the bridge and in the back, not at the front.
Oh, really? How did it end? People just left because they were tired of beating them? They landed there?
Yeah, they dispersed. Yeah, they dispersed. Everybody went back home. And those, and you had whole bunches of police officers and stuff that were there. But after the order was approved by the president, because Highway 80 is a federal highway, after permission was given for them to march, the same people that beat the people actually escorted them and dared other people to stop them. Isn't that weird?
Hold on. Now you got me, man. Hold on. Is all this one day?
No. no.
Okay. The beatdown happened on one
you
day or
had,
more
like
than
I
one
said,
day?
you had three events that took place like in a 5 to 10 day period, right? You
Okay.
had what was called Turnaround Tuesday, which was where they threatened to, but they never did. Then you had
Hold on. Let me stop you there. Who threatened? The people did or the cops?
No, what you had was you had the people threatening to march. They organized, a lot of young people were there, had come from out of town. A lot of people, they were saying they were going to march and they didn't. And that's called Turnaround Tuesday. That's when people started to lose confidence in Martin Luther King as a leader, because SNCC wanted to march, the local people wanted to march, but King didn't want to do it. So you had that. Then you had the march to where they went to push the, to get the police to do what they did, right? Because you've got a window to where they applied for a permit to march on the federal highway, but it didn't come through. They were waiting and they didn't know when it was going to happen, so they took matters into their own hands, and that's when things began to push. So the push came for them to march, and then after that, about a week or so later, that's when they did after that you had the successful march.
Okay, so now let's go. Now you got the turnaround Tuesday, which might have been 2 weeks before the Bloody Sunday.
Right.
Between that, there was another day that you said there were 3 of them. What happened the second day?
Yeah, that was Bloody Sunday. That was when people got beat up.
Oh, and the third day, what happened?
The third one was when they actually marched.
And the third one, they made it how far?
They made it all the way to Montgomery. See, because what was stopping them was the fact that they could not get the permit to march.
I got you.
That's why the police stopped them to begin with. So in the process, what was the holdup between the Bloody Sunday and the march itself was the permit. So when they got the permit,
let me ask you this. But it sounds like Bloody Sunday was a march too.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a march, but they knew they weren't going to make it. Well, right. They didn't have the permit to do it.
I got you.
That's why the police were out there to begin with.
We can imagine that people who got beat on Bloody Sunday came back when they did have the permit and marched again.
Yeah, and that's why I said the very police officers that were beating them on Bloody Sunday actually escorted them and helped them when the march was official. So those same white mobs.
Okay, but we getting there, man. You on point. I guess my question is, why did a permit be the only reason why the police beat them, instead of the reason why the police beat them is because we don't want this in Montgomery. We don't want you to be successful. We don't want it in our town, whatever.
No. What and that reason, the reason why you asked that question is a part of critical analysis to show the power of the law. You see, when you practice civil disobedience, the whole point is to break the law to bring about a greater social change. Okay?
I got you.
So Bloody Sunday was done to do exactly what it did. See, that's why I said this is a strategy. It's not just people trying to do stuff. That's why these types of things have to be taught, you see, because it just makes it look like we're going to march and all these, these white people are just going to beat us. And no, they know exactly what they were doing. They were practicing civil disobedience, right? And so civil disobedience requires self-sacrifice. So people saw how brutal white people were, even in dealing with people who were breaking the law. You see?
I got you. Let me ask you this. Did his body did they ever do that? Did they ever cascade his body over the bridge or any of that kind of thing?
No, and not only that, the person who actually killed him was convicted a few years ago. in his old age. The state trooper that killed him, whose name escapes me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was,
but they
buried.
never did take the body over the bridge.
No.
And are there historical markers where that signifies this? Are there
all along Highway 80, there are markers, and they're even more going up as we speak.
Is there one at the foot of the bridge?
Yes.
And then is there one in Montgomery at some point that historical marker probably says something different than the one at the foot of the bridge?
Well, yeah, they're going to be different markers strolled out. There are markers identifying the death of people like Viola Luzo, who was killed along Highway 80. She was trying to transport people from Montgomery back to Selma and back to where they were from. During the march, she was killed. And you've got markers to Reverend Boone and other people who were critical in the movement. So, it's up to the individual people to put the markers up there. And I think we're doing a good job of identifying the sites.
Yeah, maybe just a couple more. How hurt was John Lewis?
Yeah, he was hit in the head. He was pretty hurt. I mean, people were beat up. I mean, people had broken bones, fractured skulls, cerebral, hemorrhaging. You had all types of internal injuries. You had a lot. I mean, it wasn't just him. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a whole host of people, missing teeth, broken jaws, those types of things. But those same people jumped right back out there when it was, some people couldn't do the whole thing. They could only do part of it because they had to work and all that type of stuff. But for the most part, it was bruises and broken bones and fractures and that type of stuff.
How did the media, and you said this, he wanted to do it to get the media. Who was the media that could cover that to make it go national? Was there like Time magazine and that kind of thing?
If you read the books and so forth, you'll see you had media from all over the world there.
Oh, really?
This was a world event. Yeah. You had outsiders coming in, some of whom were killed, just to participate, in this march. And that's why, unfortunately, our children are slaughtering each other and killing each other on the streets with high-powered rifles, purely because we don't teach them nonviolent principles. If we taught them the principles of nonviolence, I guarantee you we wouldn't be killing each other like we're doing.
Yeah.
But because we haven't done that and we don't teach the history, we do to ourselves worse than we do to white people. Yeah. But what you have is that you had this being the top media event in the country, probably pale in comparison only to maybe Pearl Harbor.
Oh my God. So they all there to take the pictures, to show it, so on and so forth.
Right. You had major news media, abandoning their programming, cutting into some of the top TV programs in the country to show it, and like I said, in different books, you have the accounts of the photographers, the journalists, the artists that were there. I mean, it was just a whole, it was just thousands and thousands of people that were in Selma to try to participate in some kind of way.
And so now we're talking about, this is how many years ago, what anniversary are we celebrating at this point?
Yeah, it was, well, we have to do the math. It was 1965 when it happened, so.
But the last bridge crossing was I know it was the 53rd, 7th or something like that. I guess.
I want to say 57th, but.
Yeah, I think it was 57th. So every year there is some activities surrounding this.
Right. Every year there's a commemoration of the bridge of the Bloody Sunday.
And that's the organization that you're a part of that is taking on the responsibility of keeping this alive. And it's called what now?
Right. It's called the Jubilee Bridge Crossing. And so we commemorate that day with speeches, and well, it's a whole week of activities actually. And typically I participate in two parts of it. I was inducted into the Hall of Resistance and to the Great Hall of Teachers for the past 4 years, one and then the other this past time. And we have an education summit, and we have a mock trial to where we reenact a famous trial that took place during the civil rights movement, or even now, like reparations or critical race theory and that type of stuff. So we have, and I participated in that well as a lawyer and as a expert witness.
I love it. Just two more questions. Jubilee doesn't sound to me. That first thing that came to mind. Why Jubilee? Why that title?
Oh, well, because it's a celebration, and
Really?
and even oh, absolutely. I mean, because what you're doing is, you're celebrating the moral and the intellectual and the spiritual victory. That's what the word is. It's actually a resting of of one's struggle against self. And so Jubilee historically, as far as African Americans are concerned with biblical roots, is we feel is an appropriate term because it is a celebration of the past.
Another question came to mind. After it all simmered down, what came out of that?
Well, what you had was you had the Voting Rights Act, which emerged out of it, which in Alabama led to the creation of one of the most powerful political alliances to ever take place in the South. In particular, it created a new federal court district, the sixth judicial circuit, if my memory serves me correctly. In Alabama, it resulted in the election of hundreds of Blacks to various elected positions, including 2 Blacks on the state Supreme Court, something we have not had since. The election of a Black to the state school board, election of Blacks in circuit courts, sheriffs, mayors, judges, superintendents, and so forth. So not enough attention is paid to that part, which in my opinion, far pales in comparison. I mean, it's far more important than the stuff that took place before. And I know that's a bold statement, but we don't want to talk about political power, and so that's part of our narrative that's amputated. But when you look at what the creation of the Alabama Democratic Conference did and the creation of the Alabama Education Association and their power in getting people elected, getting governors elected, getting money to the people. I mean, the accomplishments are renowned. We just don't celebrate them, and that's for another show. Yeah, and hopefully we can pick up with that. But we don't appreciate enough the political aspects of our resistance and our movement. We just want to focus on the sensationalism of what it took to get there. And so once we study the political organizing, which is really the most important aspect of our history and our education, these things that we're talking about now will be more meaningful. The point is not to have to march anymore purely because your politics should take care of itself.
All right, I got you. Let me ask you this. This just came to mind. Do y'all name the guy who was the head of the state troopers who said, okay, now go get him?
Do we name him?
Yeah, who was that guy?
Well, the person, so you have to understand, and I don't remember who that person was, but Jim Clark was the sheriff in Selma. Jim Clark is the personification of white supremacy, right? He was very brutal. He beat up a lot of the civil rights workers and so forth. And he had on his lapel pin, he had never on it, which means that that Blacks would never be equal with whites. And so he was the one because, and this is another issue we can talk about at another time. Whenever power or whenever Black people organized or mobilized, right? The whole state went into a totalitarian system, right? Which means that all of the power of judge, jury, executioner was placed into the hands of one person who could basically do whatever they wanted to do. and in Montgomery, in Selma, Montgomery, and in Birmingham, right? When Black people started to march, all of the power was given to the sheriff, right? So the sheriff actually becomes the one in charge of the state troopers, the posse that they got, the deputies, the city police. And so when you talk about totalitarian dictatorships, we know exactly what that is. Because
now, what about Montgomery? Did Montgomery have a sheriff too that made the call?
Well, interestingly enough, the sheriff was cool, but the city police was the one. That's why I say it was either the city police or the sheriff would be the ones that would be in charge. The largest mobilization of law enforcement was in Montgomery, Alabama, and don't quote me on this, in 1968, when the students at Alabama State University marched because of the way that they were treated in Montgomery, Alabama. So you had the largest mobilization at the time to take place in a place called Oak Park in Montgomery, Alabama, where you had state and people under posse comitatus, and you had sheriff deputies and policemen all over organizing to stop that push by the Alabama State University students. So there were more law enforcement in Montgomery to stop the students than they were on the bridge during Bloody Sunday.
Really? Oh my gosh.
And they did the same thing. They chased people in the houses, kicked doors in, violated constitutional rights, did everything. And they appreciated the student marches more because the SNCC people had been on the campuses organizing the students for months to do what they did.
Oh my God.
The
So
FBI was there, National Guard.
let me ask you this. When you all do the events each year, you mentioned a few of them, you all walk across the bridge?
Yeah, I mean, thousands of people on the Sunday. I mean, Kamala Harris spoke this last time. And so you have thousands of people that walk across the bridge on that Sunday. And I mean, and it's a surreal feeling every time you do it. You know, you feel like and then at the other side of the bridge, the foot soldiers greet you. And if you know who to look for, you get all of this history firsthand. I'm telling it to you. I wasn't there. Yeah. So I'm telling it to you only from what the different people have told me. And trust me, there are a lot of contradictions in what people say. So that's why I might hesitate or may have to retract something. Yeah. Purely because of, who's telling the story. Yeah. But what we do have is what other people don't have is minutes of footage of the fight itself. That's why I can go into some detail because I have the video footage of what actually happened.
I got you. Yeah, well, I love it. Well, hey, is there a question that I have not asked you in this regard?
I think the most important was what came out of it.
Yeah.
Because
I got you.
That's the black hole of history. That's the mundane areas that really we need answers to, because people say, well, I mean, people say some stupid stuff. I heard one guy say that Martin Luther King had a dream, but not a plan, which was a lie. I mean, I won't say a lie. It was a misstatement. Yeah, a very careless statement, because in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? He maps out a heck of a plan that was already being put in place. Yeah. The fact that you had the formation of political caucuses and platforms, which got Black people elected to office. They got public policies changed and shifted. The Mississippi Freedom Summer couldn't get Black people seated to the Democratic convention, but ADC, Alabama Democratic Conference, did, and as did others. The Lowndes County Freedom Organization, which organized under the banner of a Black Panther, emerged into the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in Oakland, California at Merritt College. I mean, it's just, yeah, I got you. Hopefully the next time we meet, we can pick up and go from there.
Let me ask you one more question. And I know you probably are doing this. Would y'all like a standalone building that would be a museum of this event?
Yeah, they're in the process of building several. We've got museums and stuff down there, but they're underfunded and need a lot of attention. Hopefully that's coming too.
I got you.
Yeah, there's a whole effort, man, to revive and revamp and totally redo Selma. I just hope Selma people are able to take advantage of it.
Hey, everybody, this is what I do with Strong Inspirations. I ask questions of the guy who knows, because he asked the questions of the people who were there. And he did the research, he see the videos, and he's super smart. All that stuff too. I told you about that at the beginning. Hit the subscribe button to Strong Inspirations. Hit the like button on this video.
Brother Anthony, I'm out.
About it. Huh?
I got class, so I'm out.
Yep. Hit the like button. To you, my brother, I say stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing. You got class to teach them kids some more. Everybody, he fit us in, didn't he? He fit us in to tell us this. And I thank him so very much once again. With that, I'll say bye-bye, we out.